We did do it, didn't we? Let me first introduce our elected officials with us today. State Representative Joe Gibbons. State Representative Elaine Schwartz. Do we have any other state representatives or state senators with us today?
Right here,
Taxpayer. There you go. Taxpayer. We have City of Hollywood Mayor Peter Bober. City of Hollywood Commissioner Dick Blattner. And City of Hallandale Beach Commissioner Keith London. Do we have any other local, county or local officials? Any taxpayers? There you go. All right, so, what can I say? I have to recognize one very special person that made this Children's Hospital what it is today. Not this building, the Children's Hospital. For years, you've heard me say that the Children's Hospital is not about bricks and mortar or steel, concrete, and glass. It's about people and the people inside and the people caring for our most vulnerable, our kids that are very ill. And this Children's Hospital didn't really begin in earnest without Nina Beauchene. Nina is the fabric of the Children's Hospital. I've actually tried to take her and move her to other hospitals, and she just wouldn't let me do it. So she is a fabric. There's somebody else I have to recognize. Actually, several people I have to recognize who make this Children's Hospital go. And that person is no longer with us, but it's Joe DiMaggio. And I want to talk a little bit about Joe and his relationship to this hospital in a moment. But representing Joe at today's event is his granddaughter, Paula Hammer. Where's Paula? Paula, stand up. Paula is her husband, Jim, and her daughter, Valerie, Joe's great-granddaughter. And I would be very remiss if I didn't recognize a person that helped convince Joe to do this project. That's Morris Engelberg. Where's Morris? Morris Engelberg is Joe DiMaggio's friend, confidant, attorney, and really has made a difference in this. The first time and you know what? The other person I have to recognize is taking my picture right now, and that's Joe Riley. It was Joe Riley's idea to approach Joe DiMaggio and ask him to put his name on the hospital. We were floating a lot of names around, and we were developing a great children's hospital, but without recognition. And Joe suggested that we approach Joe DiMaggio. And Morris was so kind to have a meeting in his office, ironically here in Hollywood, Florida. And Joe Riley, myself, and Dr. Birkin, you're going to hear from Dr. Gary Birkin later, approached Joe DiMaggio, and told him that we'd like to name the hospital after him. And he said, well, certainly I have to come see what you're doing. And he said, what do you want from me? I said, your name. I says, we don't want your money, and we're not going to give you any money. Unlike some other places, but I won't mention them. I said, we just want your name. We want your name. And so he came over, did a tour, we talked about our long-term vision, and for some reason, he said yes. And that was Morris. I think we started that process in April of 1992, and we had an agreement in early May of 1992 and we dedicated it in September of 1992. Is that right? September 17th. September 17th, 1992. Morris calls me and says, you know, Joe wants to come out now and start visiting the hospital. So he would come out every 3-4 weeks, Morris, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and he'd visit and he'd tour. If you get a chance to see some of the pictures around the hospital, you'll see Joe throwing a ball to a kid that obviously just had neurosurgery, and the ball's midair and the kid's hands like this, and Joe looking at another child in a NICU bassinet, and it was just amazing. Joe's face would light up when he would come and tour the hospital. And then he'd always want to go to lunch. I knew if Joe's coming out, I had to keep my lunch free. That day was free for lunch. And then one day, Morris Engelberg says, Joe wants to know what your favorite Italian restaurant in Hollywood is. And I says, right here at Memorial. And he says, you serious? I said, yeah, tell me what you want. Our chef will prepare it. We wanted linguine pomodoro, not too al dente, and no garlic and no onions. Okay? And then from that point on, Joe started coming out more frequently. Because he found out it was the best Italian food in Hollywood. But I was honored that, again, through Morris, Joe asked if I'd go up to the Italian-American Sports Hall of Fame in Chicago, where Joe DiMaggio had already been inducted, but he was given a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it was the day that they were opening up the Sports Hall of Fame, and a life-size, actually more than life-size, bronze statue of Joe DiMaggio was being unveiled. And Joe asked me to speak, and he asked me to speak not about Joe DiMaggio or about his baseball years. He asked me to speak about what he meant to the Children's Hospital in Hollywood, Florida. And I spoke about that. And I have to tell you something. This today would not have been possible without Joe DiMaggio. And there's a bit of irony. There's a bit of irony today. Because many of you don't know this, but on July 16, 1941, 70 years ago, 70 years ago, Joe DiMaggio hit his 56th game. His 56th consecutive game. You tell me the stars aren't lined up, the gods aren't looking down, that the dedication of this children's hospital is on the 70th anniversary of his hitting streak. The streak that still lasts, and the streak that many say will never be broken. Unfortunately, on July 17, 1941, pitchers Al Smith and Jim Bagby of the Cleveland Indians held him hitless. Two hard shots came close to hits, but great defensive stops were made by third baseman Ken Kelter that ended that streak. And Morris will remember this. In Chicago, after that dedication, we went to a little Irish pub in the hotel at the Hilton. And Joe sat down very relaxed. We had a beer. And Joe talked about that day that his streak ended and how he walked. Back then, they didn't take their big expensive cars to and from the stadium or a bus. They walked back to the hotel. And Joe was walking with Phil Rizzuto, and he said there was a little bar. And he wanted to go in and have a drink. And Phil said, Joe, can I come and keep you company? He said, no, I'd rather be by myself. I'd rather be by myself and reflect. A great man. And I think, Joe DiMaggio made his early career in baseball, his second career as an American icon, and I think history remembered him as being the father of a great children's hospital. Thank you.